Our priorities are all screwed up, Mr. President.
This is a way of changing our direction so that our tax system is adequate to the needs that we face in the 21st century.
We have a spending problem, and it's not a revenue problem.
We are not there yet, and we are still not close to being there.
We welcome his suggestions, and we'll be working hard to see what we can incorporate.
We'll do everything that we can to stop it.
I remain optimistic that we'll get this Millionaires Tax done.
Lawmakers say it is the biggest bill in decades in Washington. The proposal to tax those who make $1 million a year is moving through the Capitol. But with less than 3 weeks left in the session, the question is, will it pass? In this week's episode of In Session, we are taking a deep dive into the so-called Millionaires Tax and getting answers to your questions about it. We also have updates on a couple of the biggest bills this session, including one that concerns your privacy on the roads and a proposal to lower the threshold for driving drunk. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Christine Pei. Olympia Bureau Chief Drew Mikkelsen is at the Capitol now. And Drew, there was a lot of debate on that Millionaires Tax bill this week. And as of now, Governor Ferguson says he is not ready to sign it into law.
That's right, Christina. Yeah, a lot of debate here at the Capitol this past week on this. Governor Bob Ferguson says he's open to the idea, and he says he's optimistic legislators can get him a bill that he's going to sign. But as of now, he called it, quote, not close to being ready for his signature. Will it change? We'll see. So this income tax on millionaires targets Washington households that make more than $1 million a year. There would be a 9.9% levy on any earnings above $1 million. There are tax breaks included for low-income families and small business owners. Under the current version, there'd be no sales tax on grooming or hygiene products. That version of the bill passed out of the Senate Monday, 27-22. It now heads over to the House. Democrats behind the income tax say it is time.
My why at this point in my career in the legislature is about making sure that we have a fantastic, well-funded system of public schools in our state. Mr. President, there is no path for us to make the kinds of investments that we want and need to make in the public schools of Washington state without having the kind of revenue that this bill offers us the opportunity to have. We need to do more to fund smaller class sizes, to fund special education for our students. We need to do more to fund school construction so that kids all across the state are going to school in great buildings. We need to do more to fund student transportation. And that is the kind of investment, the kind of debate that this bill will unlock for the legislature in future years.
This is not about penalizing wealthy people, wealthy Washingtonians. It is simply asking for proportionality in our tax structure at a time when the gap between rich and poor has never been greater. My district is the one that this policy will affect the most. Even though more people in my district, more households will pay this tax than any other district in the state, I've heard support from my constituents. My constituents know that our schools are underfunded and they're willing to pay more in taxes to help ensure that Washingtonian families can succeed, that they believe we must do more to ensure that all our schools, not just those in wealthy Democratic districts like mine, have the resources that they need to give out our students the best education possible.
3 Democrats voted against the proposal, along with every Republican in the Senate. Many Republicans fear that this income tax is eventually going to be expanded to include everybody in the state. Others say it's just not needed.
This bill is bad for the economy, Mr. President. This puts Washington state business at a disadvantage. Business doesn't operate in a vacuum. It operates in a competitive environment. And right now, we rank 45 out of 50 in tax competitiveness. This will certainly put us behind, Mr. President. There was a recent survey of over 400 Washington businesses. 44% of them said they're considering moving their business out of state. This is certainly bad for our economy. Lawmakers should be supporting policy that supports business and supports the economy, not just policy that taxes it into oblivion. Capital flight, Mr. President, that is a real thing. People with means, people who earn the amounts as described in this bill, they have the means to move their assets, to move their residences out of our state. When they leave, Mr. President, we lose out on all of their revenue, we lose out on their jobs, we lose out on so many things because they'll just take it with them.
If the state is able to tax income in this way, when is it enough? Is it ever enough? And how much is it going to take? So we talk about education, we talk about healthcare, public servants, childcare, higher education, and they're all really important, Mr. President. But we've also got to answer the question for a lot of folks who believe that what we're doing here today is going to eventually come down to them. And it's going to be lower and lower because there isn't going to be enough. And so we do need to, at the same time we're doing this, we need to answer that question, Mr. President. When is it enough?
So that debate happened on Monday. Then on Tuesday, the governor held a press conference giving us a chance to ask him what he thinks about this. Back in December, he said he liked the idea, but he made it clear it had to come with significant, that was the word he kept using, significant tax breaks for low-income families and small business owners. He says it's just not there yet. He also made it clear that if there was a bill that came before him that would allow it to go below that $1 million, he would not sign that.
I hear concerns of any Washingtonian concerned with any tax increase. So I think what I would say is those of us who support the concept of millionaires tax need to be really, really clear that it applies to less than 0.5% of Washingtonians, right? And I've not said that today, and I should have said that today, right? Like I should have done that, right? Been crystal clear about that. That is something we need to emphasize so the public understands who this applies to. And to the earlier question, to be also clear, it's $1 million and it goes up with inflation every single year after that, to be equally clear about that. And to be clear about where the money goes. I don't think the public would support a millionaire's tax if the money simply got deposited in the state general fund without significant dollars going back to the people, right? You know, it's not, again, just about taxing the wealthy, it's about making life more affordable for Washingtonians.
The governor offered some suggestions on what might make it a little easier for him to sign it. He liked the idea of creating 5 sales tax holidays. There'd be 5 days on the calendar where consumers wouldn't have to pay any sales tax on products up to $1,000. He said that would be a great little piece of relief. He also wants more tax breaks for low-income families. He wants to end the sales tax on diapers. The bill now, as we said, heads to the House. We had a chance to talk to the House leaders, the Speaker of the House and the House Majority Leader, about those suggestions. They wouldn't talk specifics, but they said that they're going to accept some discussion and have some negotiations. They share in the optimism that this will get done, but obviously that bill will have to be changed a little bit, and that's what happens here at the state capitol.
Yeah,
Christine?
so Drew, if the House changes the bill that the Senate passed, what happens procedurally?
Yeah, here's a little legislative 101 lesson for everyone here. So the Senate has passed a bill. The House could just rubber stamp it and then it would go to the governor. The governor may not sign it though. So looks like the House will probably tweak it a little bit, and when they do that, it has to go back to the Senate, have another debate like that, have another vote, and then it goes back to the House, and if they don't change it then it gets stamped and goes straight to the governor. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, Drew, so we have been getting a lot of viewer questions about this new tax proposal, and really a lot of good questions, and we'd like to have you answer some of them for us. The first question comes from Suzanne. She says, I am retired and have Social Security. I own part of a commercial building. Is the rental income I receive included in this bill?
It would be, or at least it could be, depending how much someone is making on a rental property. I asked a Senate spokesperson about this, and they said that they consider rental income just like a salary that you'd get at a job. So maybe somebody owns a lot of apartments and they're making more than $1 million. After maintenance and other taxes are paid, I was told, they would be subject to the tax. And if they do have a salary and then make a little bit of money on the side through a rental property, if those combined get you over $1 million, then you would be subjected to this tax.
Okay, Drew, and here is another question from Dennis. He asks, Why is it not up to the voters to vote on this and/or amend the state constitution?
It could be eventually, but the way this has been written, it's going to pass under what's called an emergency clause, which means it would not be subjected to a referendum by the voters automatically. But there's an initiative process that people could still go through, and the sponsors of this bill do expect voters to have the final say. They say that's what happens with the initiative process. So it probably will get its day at the ballot box. It could very likely get its day in court as well. A lot of folks don't think it's constitutional, and the backers of the bill say they are ready for that battle, and the governor thinks it would uphold or at least survive a court challenge.
Okay, we're going to see. And also we have another one from Deanna. This was really interesting. She asks, what are the anticipated impacts to professional sports? Will this push professional sports out of Seattle due to high taxation of players?
Yeah, I asked Senator Jamie Peterson this question directly, and he said a couple interesting things. Number one, he said most athletes are already paying these taxes around the country. They consider it a jock tax, and so teams have whole offices set up to pay out these taxes. So, for example, if Brock Purdy, the quarterback from the 49ers, comes and plays in Seattle, he would have to pay a portion of his salary into the Washington state income tax. Of course, any athlete with the Seahawks or the Mariners, anyone who makes more than $1 million a year, they would be forced to pay that tax as well. Jamie Peterson said that they did check with the local sports teams, and they did not have any objection to this tax being put on the books here in the state of Washington.
Okay, Drew, thanks so much. We will check back in with you in just a few moments. By the way, we've received dozens of questions from you. To see the ones that have been asked along with some of the answers, very interesting stuff, you can text the word tax to 206-448-4545 and we'll send you a link. Well, coming up next on In Session, lawmakers move to ban police from wearing facial coverings. The proposal inspired by ICE tactics, but raising safety concerns among officers. Plus,
we heard everything from the front yard. My husband was in the kitchen, and it was the most terrifying thing that you could imagine.
A mother's emotional plea to lower the legal limit for drunk driving after losing her 12-year-old son to someone who should not have been behind the wheel. State lawmakers want to prohibit police from wearing facial coverings. Legislators say it is a direct result of what they have seen during ICE operations. But police and others have some concerns about the bill. Olympia Bureau Chief Drew Mikkelsen joins us again at the Capitol to explain. Drew.
So, Christine, this bill passed pretty easily out of the Senate late last month. The governor has publicly said he would sign it, but first it needs to pass through the House, and that's where we are now. This bill had its first hearing before a House committee on Wednesday, and the sponsor of the legislation says he started working on it after seeing how masked ICE agents were operating around the country and the state last summer.
To me, this is just a fundamental, I think, thing that if you're going to be performing your job as a law enforcement official, whether it's local, state, or federal, the public needs to know exactly who you are and not shielding and hiding your identity.
What steps are being taken when we have people that are not following the law and are putting these officers, whether they are state or federal, in danger by putting their faces on the media, social media?
We heard that same sentiment from other Republicans as that bill made its way through the Senate last month. Police also have some concerns. They say restricting masks or facial coverings is not a problem for them. They say that's already state law. They oblige or understand that and follow that. But their concern is maybe extreme weather or for protective reasons. So the bill sponsor says they're working on that. They don't want to keep someone from being safe on the job. They just don't want people hiding their identities. At this point, it does feel like this bill has enough momentum to pass before this session wraps up on March 12th.
Yeah, and Drew, there is another state bill with some ties to federal ICE enforcement on those flock cameras, right?
Yeah, that's another one that has passed out of the Senate, and it's now in the, I want to get this right, the House Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee. It would regulate those cameras that are able to spot license plates. And they're all up and down the I-5 corridor. And they would include those controversial flock cameras that we've heard about. The cameras, police say, are a valuable crime-fighting tool. We've heard that they've helped crack murders and sexual assault cases, but there have not been any regulations on the cameras or the data. So this bill would limit how long local agencies and parking enforcement folks can hold on to those images. It would also limit federal agencies from accessing the data. And it comes after the University of Washington study that found federal agents were accessing flock camera data and photographs for immigration detainments. A sponsor of the bill says this is a privacy issue that should concern everyone.
You're out with your car, your license plate being read, you're out in public walking around downtown, or you're at a public meeting. My understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, is that people are allowed to take pictures. You don't have particular privacy when you're in a public spot. And so maybe you can school me on that. Thank you.
That's actually an excellent question. There's some folks actually that will tell you this is not a surveillance system because it captures things that you would normally see from the roadway. It's what it's being used for. And I would actually ask you all to go ahead and Google a particular company, Flock Safety, and look at the intention and what it's being used for. You can literally open up your phone in a way, look at an app, and watch as your car is being tracked. And that's the issue, is that it's being used to surveil. It's not just that it's capturing images. It's actually being used to surveil and track people through jurisdictions. And so I think that is the distinction. It's not an expectation of privacy that you don't think someone can take a picture of your license plate. I could pull out my phone and go take a picture of your license plate, but I'm not using it to track you. That should deeply concern every Washingtonian, regardless of party, regardless of affiliation. We have a problem right now where in Washington, we have no regulation on these systems, none.
More than 80 cities, 6 counties, and 3 tribal governments in Washington contracted with Flock and other similar companies last year, 2025. If it passes out of the House, then it would move on to the floor of if it passes out of the House committee, I should say, then it would move to the floor. We'll be keeping a close eye on that one for sure. Christine?
Andrew, there's another bill to discuss. The bill to lower the blood alcohol level for drivers is also moving forward. Tell us where it stands.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one to watch. For 4 years now, we've seen this bill come up, and it's moved here and there, but it's never gotten as far as it is right now. It passed out of the Senate. Now it's in the House committee, and this would lower the threshold for when someone is considered too drunk to drive from 0.08 of the blood alcohol content to 0.05. Very controversial. It's one bill that some Democrats like, some Republicans like, some Democrats hate, some Republicans hate. It's in the House right now. The future really is uncertain, but there was a mother that we heard from Kent who's hoping to change that. She wants to change some minds, change some votes as well. It was some of the more emotional testimony we've heard this session. Shelley Corey told members of the House Community Safety Committee about her son, 12-year-old Gabriel. He was killed by a drunk driver in the summer of 2023. She'd like to think tougher DUI laws may have made a difference in her son's case. This bill has plenty of opposition. The hospitality industry says it will put an unfair burden on their servers to try and determine when someone is at that 0.05 level and if they're impaired. Others say the state should just make tougher penalties for drivers currently busted at the 0.08 level. That mother, though, hoped her story might change some minds.
On July 11th, 2023, I sent the final text message to my 12-year-old son, Gabriel. Okay, see you soon. He was walking home from a local park. Minutes later, while in my front yard, I heard the horrific sounds of a crash. Screeching of brakes, multiple violent impacts, and the sound of a truck's axle dragging across the pavement before the rest of the truck smashed through a wooden fence. I raced to the street, frantically trying to call my husband, who had just heard it all from inside our home. He was already right behind me. Just after telling him that Gabriel was on his way home, I saw him. I screamed my husband's name, and we raced to our son's side. Gabriel lay there lifeless, a scene of absolute devastation, a child broken by the force of a truck driven recklessly by an intoxicated 19-year-old. Every hand that arrived to help was heroic, but Gabriel passed, and life as we knew it ended. In the middle of the street, just feet from our front door. While my advocacy is rooted in the memory of Gabriel, my support for this bill is more than just my personal tragedy. It is also informed by my many years as a masked certified server. The hospitality industry may see the 0.05 limit as a burden. I see it as a vital shield. Judging impairment is difficult. A lower limit encourages consumers to think twice, which in turn prevents overservice and protects staff and businesses from liabilities. Had this standard existed sooner, Gabriel might still be here. A young driver's future might be different, and peace of two families might remain intact. By passing this bill, we aren't just changing a law. We're choosing a different legacy, proving to the next generation that we will no longer tolerate the preventable devastation of drinking and driving. Thank you so much.
The bill's prime sponsor, Senator John Lovick, he's a Democrat from Snohomish County, used to be a county sheriff, also a state trooper. He says he's optimistic he'll have the votes this year, but it is really not clear at this point. He said he's never worked on legislation so hard, and he's been here since the 1990s. It's one that he's hoping to get across the finish line. Christine?
Okay, Drew, thank you very much. Well, House lawmakers have passed a first-of-its-kind bill in Olympia aimed at making artificial intelligence more transparent. House Bill 1170 would require clear labeling and notifications whenever content is created or altered by AI. The sponsor of the bill, Democratic State Representative Clyde Shavers, says the goal is about keeping truth within reach as technology makes it harder to tell what's real online. The bill is now in the Senate Committee on Environment, Energy, and Technology and is expected to make it to the Senate floor. Up next, we'll go back to Drew Mikkelsen in Olympia for a look at what's to come next week during the session. With less than 3 weeks left in the legislative session, it will be a race to get bills passed in Olympia. Olympia Bureau Chief Drew Mikkelsen joins us again with a look at what's to come. Drew.
Yeah, Christine, we're really getting into the crunch time here in Olympia. There'll be some long nights and early mornings coming for the legislators here. Monday, we are going to get our first look at the supplemental budget, and that'll be coming out of the Senate. As I said, this is a supplemental budget, essentially just tweaking the big two-year budget they all signed last year. But there's a $2 billion deficit now facing budget writers. Will that result in cuts to schools or child care subsidies? That's been talked about. There will be some tax increases coming as well. They're exploring increasing the cost of cigarettes by $2 a pack. Paper bags may cost you more at the grocery store, so there will be a lot to talk about when we finally see that proposal on Monday morning. Christine.
Andrew, it sounds like there's another cutoff deadline that could kill some high-profile bills.
Yeah, we're at the stage where every week now the list gets shorter and shorter. And this coming Wednesday, we're talking about the cutoff for policy bills to get out of committee. And that basically is anything that doesn't have to do with the budget, the non-budgetary bills. And yes, some high-profile ones are teetering out there on the fence. We mentioned the drunk driving threshold bill, dropping that BAC from 0.08 to 0.05. That has a big committee vote on Tuesday. And the committee chair, Representative Roger Goodman, told us that it's, quote, up in the air whether that bill has enough votes to pass out of the committee, let alone the House floor. We'll see if it gets there. We'll be watching that one along with that ban on facial coverings. That one does appear to have a lot more support. That committee will be voting on the mask ban on Monday. And Christine, I do have a little bad news to report. I know you and I have been following this state shark bill. That didn't make it out of committee. So the blunt-nosed six-gill shark will have to wait until 2027 before it gets another chance to go into the official state records as the official state shark. So not this year. Blunt-nosed, sorry.
It's okay. Okay, that's fine, Drew. Thanks so much for covering that so closely. Maybe next session, right? Next year. Thanks so much. Drew Mikkelsen reporting in Olympia. Thank you. Well, we will have more on all of these topics on the next In Session. And to see all of our coverage so far, you can text the word session to 206-448-4545 and we'll send you a link. Thank you very much for joining us. Until next time.